All right. Okay. That looks good. Ish. It looks good-ish. Okay, I'll make sure that one's off. Yeah. Good. Mm-hmm. Oh, that redemption didn't turn up in here, did it? I think we only care about one there. Let's have a look, shall we? Hmm. Is this it, maybe? There we go. We could make that one simpler as well. That's what this is, isn't it? Yeah, hang on. This isn't right. Why are we boxing that one? And what do you return? You do return that. And that becomes a Twitch event. Gotcha. That's why. Okay. Okay. Should we do a game doll then? Okay. Let's see. What is this? Hmm. What could this be? I'm not sure. I know the cover when I see it. This looks very familiar, but okay. I just got a message here. Okay. Okay. What a ridiculous name. Yeah, that'll have to do. Okay. I know this game. I just don't. It just doesn't. No. Indigo. I did not know this game at all. I lie. Tell a fib. Do the artwork then. Serial cleaner? No. All right. This is some kind of Wii game, obviously. Cooking. Mama? No. Is that you cooking, Mau Mau? No. No, Danny. Chibi Robo. All right. A GameCube's not even Wii. Okay. Apparently not on top of things today. How you all doing? We're starting a little bit late today. It's been a very busy day, and now it is not as busy. So here we are. All right. I thought maybe we could go through a little bit about Anathema, what it is, and what you can do with it. But I'm really thinking I wish I hadn't eaten all the granola now. Because it's kind of stuck in my teeth. And it's very warm. Let me go and turn a fan on. Hang on. Hello, Simporus. How you doing? You dreamt about LSP? Well, that is something, right? Kind of, Maniac. Kind of. But also no. So you need to know Rust if you're going to build something with it. But you don't need to know Rust if someone else has built something with it and you want to change it, right? Which is where the strength of it lies, right? More Dune. Is it Dune Prophecy? Is it good? The Dune Prophecy, mate. Dune Prophecy, Jenny. Awakening. I see. Are you playing the modern, the new games? No retro there, then. Yeah, but it's kind of intuitive, so let's do something with it so I can kind of show this, right? So let's get this set up so we get something running. All right, there you go. Now you have built your first Anathema app. Okay, so now we just have the mother. Did you keep up with that? All right, so we're just going to start this up, and all we have here are two terminals, one showing the program running and one showing the template, right? So this is just us editing the template. And yeah, there's a few things that are worth knowing. So if we go to GitHub, and we're going to go to the guide. Need a URL for this thing, right? All this you can probably skip. And that. This is probably all you have to look at when it comes to building something with it, right? So if we can sort of look at how the structure of an element is, right? So really it is element followed by attributes followed by some kind of value, right? And commons, attributes, default data types that we have with examples, loops, if else switch, and either. What's really interesting, or probably more interesting here, other than all of this stuff, is probably the elements, right? Because these are the building blocks that you will use to create your layout, right? So Anathema is inherently about building layouts in the terminal, right? You'll have your application that provides state into the... Well, it provides the state that the templates can use to render, that holds values, and you do your logic in the states, right? But the templates are reasonably decent to work with as well, right? So when you want to create some kind of layout, you can very easily do so, right? If we think about this, if we open up, no, we'll do, well, actually, we can do it in here, right? So let's just say that this is our screen. And in here, in this sort of half crooked, whatever, right? We can design our application in here, right? Look at this. We're going to add some perspective to this beautiful screen here, right? That, right? And then you have a little cable going out there. Actually, it's just a dude that's kind of falling out of there and he's having a terrible day. Or maybe he's doing acrobatics, right? I don't know. Neither do you, so we're good. All right, so you want to design something around an idea that you have, right? And maybe you start sort of doodling that you want to have a button up here that does something, right? And then you want to have, I don't know what you'd have here, some kind of message output. Then here you have some kind of list of elements, right? Whatever they are. And then maybe here, okay, let's say that we're doing some kind of mail client, right? I don't know. We should really explore that, Maniac. I don't know how to translate the states into other languages. That one is tricky, to say the least. Because it leans pretty heavily on some Rust features. So I don't know how you would translate that. But let's say that this is what we want to show. We want to show some kind of input field or whatever here. I don't know what we're showing here. Maybe not an input field, something else, right? Date, time, whatever. Here's going to have a list of, let's say that it's a list of emails, right? We're building the next MUT now, right? I don't know if you guys ever used MUT. All right. And then I don't know, this would be maybe some kind of tree view of your inbox, right? It's a very nice tree here, right? Maybe something like this, right? So good, Tommy. Happy you got it working. It will create some sort of effect. Yeah, you're always gonna have to cross an FFI boundary, right? That's just how it goes when you interact with another binary, right? Thank you, Gandalf, for the sub. Man, I should go and get a toothpick. They drive me crazy. Thank you so much, Gandalf. So let's say that this is our design. This is what we want to build. Now, if we assume that the information is already there, so we're gonna put some placeholder. Thank you for that, Major Siska. Maybe what we built today is a range field. Thank you so much, Major. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So we can very easily translate this thing into Anathema, right? You see, the components are what you define yourself, right? So you define a component that holds the information, like the data about the application. So you have two parts of it. You have the data, which is your state. Actually, there's three parts of it. You have the data, which is your state. You have your component, which is your logic, right? Your business logic, if you will. And then you have the AML, which is your layout, right? Is it a public repo? Absolutely. And it's public. It's in the public repo, and it's released as well. It's currently 0.2.8. I think the latest version is. So if you see a layout like this, it is reasonably simple to create this layout. Right? We can see how this works. This outer part is just going to be your viewport. So that one we don't have to worry about, right? But we have one element there and one element there, and they're stacked horizontally. So if we were to take this, let me do a little bit of floatiness here. Hang on. I modified the wrong screen. There we go, right? Let's do a little bit of this. Now, middle. All right, and then we're gonna go to Excali draw. I don't think I spelled that right at all, right? All right, so we can break this down. Now, let me retrace this in here, right? So we have that, then we have, come on. Something, this is so buggy sometimes. I'm just gonna copy the elements instead of trying to make sense of them, because, you know, buggity boo. And then we have the left-hand side here. And then we have sort of the right-hand side there, right? So if we look at it like this, then this is going to be our viewport. So we just give it a hideous color there, right? This too will be surrounded by another element. So this will be our horizontal stack. We're gonna put like the stacking data in blue, right? And then underneath that, we're gonna have another horizontal stack for these two. And then we're gonna have both of these horizontal stacks inside a vertical stack. So we're gonna put that here, right? So this is kind of the layout that we're talking about here, right? We have a vertical stack, which is, vertical, with two horizontal stacks in it. Then we just have some box there and some box there. I don't know what they are, right? It doesn't really matter, right? They could be different elements, right? I don't know what we would even call them, right? And then we have some kind of list view here and the sort of the main view here, right? This is very easy to build in Anathema. We're doing this while the application is running. So let's start with the outer one, right? The outer one is going to be our vertical stack. So we just put a V stack there, okay? That's it. Now we have a vertical stack. It's showing up here, but you can't see it because it doesn't do anything. Then inside the vertical stack, the first element we're going to have is this horizontal stack that contains these two elements. So let's put a horizontal stack in there. Again, we can't see anything because we haven't added anything extra in there, right? Wow, thank you guys so much for the hype train. Thank you. Thank you, Anonymous Gifter, for a gift sub to Pirate Software. Thank you so much. But we can draw a border around this to see this now, okay? So that's going to be our top left box here. Now we want to draw this box here and want this to extend to the end of what's here, right? So let's put something in here. Let's just put a container in here. And there's a couple of ways we can do this, but the easiest one is going to be to put an expand here. That's just going to expand everything else. Again, we can't see anything because the container doesn't do anything. But if we say that the container has a height of 3, and now we can give it a... what should we put in here? We put some text in there, right? The thing on the side. There we go, right? Oh, right. There we go, right? So that's the thing on the side. Now, it doesn't look that good, so let's put some padding instead, right? And we're just going to set the padding to 1, and then it's going to sort of align itself a little bit better, right? So now we have what is effectively visible here as this guy and this guy. We haven't really done anything with this guy. Let's go and build the next thing, right? Then we're going to have another horizontal stack underneath there, right? So this is going to be our top part of the widget, right? And then here's our main part of the widget. So it's going to look reasonably similar, right? We're going to have a horizontal stack. And there, now we do. We're going to have a border followed by another border. And then we're going to have we're going to expand this on the inside and the outside. And now here we can put a width of, say, 10. And let's put something in there. Text tree view. Okay, there's a tree view. Why are we not seeing that? There we go. Because this one was expanding in all directions. So we didn't see anything else, right? Now, in this one, we can put another V-stack and a spacer instead to extend this all the way down. So we have now replicated this layout very easily, so, right? And we're doing this while the program is running. So when someone gives you a program written using Anathema, you should ideally, assuming that they don't bake the template, you can bake the templates into your program if you don't want other people to use them. You can do that, right? But if you want other people to mess around with the layout, then they can do so. They have all this and they should know about the state that you provide. In this case, let's pretend that we have state, but we're going to do this as a global variable instead, right? Called state, which is a terrible name for it, right? But we can build this in there. Let me catch up with chat first, right? Am I working on widgets? So widget is a complicated term. We have elements in the template, which are admittedly widgets, and then we have components. But widgets don't hold state, and they don't react to events. Only components do so. That would be pretty funny. I have thought about that as well. And at one point I thought about transcompiling AML to HTML just for fun, and then I threw that idea out very quickly. This is web front, and as far as you can draw parallels, but it's important to know that AML is a single pass layout, right? A multi-pass layout like you get with the web can do things like change size based on it could do 2 layout passes to get its final layout, whereas Anathema can only do 1 or only does 1, right? There are advantages to that, right? Thank you so much for the hype train. Thank you so much for the gift sub, Temporis. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's very important to realize one of the key aspects of Anathema is that you have constraint going in and size going out, right? So this changes the way you think about how a template works, right? So let's start with something as simple as the viewport. This is most likely your terminal, right? And this thing is you're going to put a border in here, all right? And that border is going to get the constraint of this viewport when we start, right? So let's say that this thing is 100 by 40 or whatever, right? So the constraint for the border is 100 by 40, meaning it cannot be larger than 100 by 40. But that's not how a border is going to size itself. A border is going to size itself based on its children. So we're going to input a text value first. We're going to put the text hello world in there, right? So this is the text hello world if you have bad handwriting. Now the border is going to get the size of hello world. Hello world gets the same constraint as the border, which is 100 by 40. Now the text takes that constraint and says, I can lay out all my text in one line here. It's going to be 5 cells wide and 1 cell tall, right? So I have a width and a height of 5 by 1. The border gets 5 by 1 out. The border passes in 100 by 40. It gets 5 by 1 out. Now the border knows the size of the child and it can size itself accordingly. So the border will add 2 in each direction, right? Because you need to draw the actual border, right? Assuming that the border size is fitting that, right? You could have a different character on the sides that actually takes up 2 cells, but that's kind of irrelevant. So the border becomes 5 plus 2 by 1 plus 2. So it's then 7 by 3. And then it reports back 7 by 3, which means if we get rid of all this for now and I say text hello, this is going to be our 5 by 1. I put a border around this and it's now going to be 7 by 3. However, that is how the border widget will size itself. If we say that this thing is an alignment, right? Now this thing looks like it's only taking up 5 by 1, but in reality, this is taking up the entire terminal, right? And this is where things can get a bit confusing, right? Because if I say that alignment here is center, to be able to calculate the center, I need to have a known size. If my known size is 5 by 1, then there's not much center going on, right? It's just going to place it in the top left corner again. So we have to use all the available space for us to be able to center something, because we need to have a point to center ourselves around, right? In this case, the middle of the screen, because that's the only known size we have. We could give this thing a known size. We can say that this thing has a... Whoops. Let's say that we have a container around this. A container will size itself around the children. If I change the color for this, right? Let's say background blue. It's going to be very bright now, right? You can see the size of this thing. Maybe this is a little bit more bearable to watch, right? So you can see the size of the thing. I mean, okay, I don't even have to do that. We can say that the background is... that instead, right? You can use hex values. You can use 3. You can use, you know, whatever takes your fancy, right? Oh, it's a bit too magenta, right? Anyway, so now we can see this thing. If we say that this thing has a width of 20, Now the alignment can fit around 20 because we constrain the width from the container. We're saying to the container, you have a screen size of 123 by 25, and the container says to the alignment, you have a screen size of 25 by 20, or rather 20 by 25, because we constrain the width here, right? So once you kind of get familiar with this, it becomes a lot easier to reason and understand about the layouts and how they work, right? Okay, let me catch up a little bit. So borders, for the sake of debugging, I would just draw borders around everything when you want to do something and you want to see a border. Just put a border element around there, right? I didn't expand, didn't get the expand direction thing either. Okay, yeah, let me show you how expand works, right? So there are, because sometimes, right, let's draw an H stack here and let's set a background to 1 to 3 again, right? You can't see anything because we're not drawing anything. If we put a text element in there, we can now see this. Oh, that's a little bit hard to see. Let's do it a little bit more vibrant, okay? But you might want to fill all the remaining space up there. So we can put a spacer in here. A spacer doesn't actually have a size. It is just, you cannot put anything inside a spacer. Right? That you can't draw in there, okay? The only thing the spacer does is say, once you laid out your widgets, I want you to use the remaining space to extend the size of this thing in a direction. If we make this into a vertical stack, it will extend it downwards, right? That's just how the spacer works. That means that if I put text here and here, we're gonna get text on both sides, okay? Let's make this a little bit less of an eyesore. Let's go with 0 and 8 maybe. Yeah, I can live with that. There we go. So here we're gonna lay out this thing and we're gonna lay out this thing. Then when it comes to our positioning, we're gonna insert the spacer, pushing everything out, right? So if you want to position something in the left corner and the right corner, you just put a spacer in between them, right? If I want to position something in the middle, if I do this, it's just gonna end up on the right-hand side. But if I put a spacer next to it, now that's in the middle, all right? And if I add another spacer, it's gonna, you can sort of see how this works, right? So this is the spacer. There is something called an expand, all right? Expand works a little bit differently, right? If I expand, it will consume all the available space, right? It will expand to fill all the available space. So if I say here that we're expanding along an axis, the horizontal axis only, in this case, well, we kind of need to have some values in there, right? But now we're extending it horizontally. If I say extend this thing vertically, then it's going to extend this all the way down, right? So expand has size. We can actually put something in here. Okay? That is inside of this expansion. We can even tell the expand to fill something, right? So fill this with hello, okay? And then it's just going to do that, right? And we're going to fill the screen with hello now. It's hello all the way to Sunday. We have our A, we have our B, and then it's just going to draw everything else with this thing, right? This left column is taken up by the A, right? And everything else is the expand. So this whole region all the way up to the B and down, that's the expansion, right? But we don't want to fill that because it's grim. So if we want to put something inside our expansion, or if we want to expand here, then we use an axis here, right? You can write the entire horizontal, right? You can write hort, you can write horizontal, you can write vert. You cannot write vertex, that doesn't work, but you can write vert and you can write vertical, okay? And apparently you cannot write vertical. You can only write vert. Oh, wait, I'm an idiot. You can write vertical. Vert and vertical. This is all listed here. So if we look at something like the expand, it will tell you about the axes, which are horizontal or vertical, and how it works, right? Yes, I didn't talk about the factor, okay? There's an expansion factor here, okay? Now, this one, we're going to expand this twice. So we're going to give this thing a background. Let's give this thing, thank you for the follow. Let's give this thing a background of a 44. Okay. So now we've expanded everything with this gray color instead. And if we put another expansion in here, now we expanded that with some kind of color. Now, these two have what's called factors, right? An expansion factor that starts with 1. Okay. That means that they each get half, okay? We take the total number of expansions and divide that by the factor, right? So if we say that this one has a factor of 2, all right, that means that we're going to divide, we take the total number of factors, right? We take the space divided by factors, and then we give that to the expansions, right? So if I say that this thing has a factor of 50 and this one has a factor of 50, well, then it's 50%, right? If I say 25 and 75 here, then that equates to 100%, right? You can use this for your factors, but in this case, this is just a quarter, right? So that's 1 and that's 4. That's 1 and that's 3, sorry. Sorry, I mathed all over that one, right? So it's 1 and 3. And since this one's already 1, we don't have to give that a factor. We just give that a factor of 3 to give it 3 quarters, right? Now I'm giving it 4/5. Now I'm giving it 5/6, right? You see how this works, right? Which is how you can easily translate this to percentage if you wanted to, right? Does it recenter if you change the pane size? A little bit late with my conversations here, but if we put an alignment here, if I can spell. All right, we've centered a div. Now, if I were to, whoops, let's not do that. If I were to change the size of this thing, it will resize it will reflow the layout when you resize the window, right? Luckily, all right, very fortunate. As a matter of fact, we just had a new event type put in just to deal with resize events, because resize events, from the perspective of a component, should be dealt with after the new size has been created. Different story. Hello, game dev. Is there something for center, or do you use multiple things to achieve center on the screen? Okay, so yes and no. Yes, you can use an alignment to center something like this, right? Let's give this thing a background color. Background of, well, let's keep it up with these kind of colors because they are bearable to our eyeballs, right? We can give this a height. Apparently we cannot give this a height if I don't actually write the height out. No, we can't give this a height. You cannot change the height of that. We have to put a container here and give this a height. All right. So now this thing is centered within the container. So this is one way of centering something horizontally, right? Another way, if we add a vertical stack here, we can have many of these, right? So we can just do this, right? We can have as many of these as we want. Okay. Another way of centering something would be with a horizontal stack. We get our div in here, and then we're going to put a spacer on each side, and it will have the same outcome, right? Let's use a background, but a slightly different background here. It's worth noting that if you want to, you can write your attributes on separate lines like this. All right, that is certainly doable if you take that kind of fancy. Let's change the color of this thing. How else can you center something? So these are kind of the ways you can expand this along the horizontal axis. That would also center something up there, right? Now we have to give this thing another color so we can see this thing, right? So yes, we are able to center things in various different fashions, right? What we talked about here is the vertical stack, and we talked about the horizontal stack, but there is a third stack called the Z stack, okay? And that one will not have any perceivable change to this. Let's move everything down there. Nothing changed. However, once we have a Z stack, we can now draw things on top of other things. So if I wanted to draw an X in the top left corner now, I can do so, right? This is going to be our, I don't know, let's call this our main nonsense, right? And then underneath this, we'll have our X. Let's get rid of this thing. And we're just going to put a text here with the letter X. And wow, there it is in the corner, right? Let's put a background of red and a foreground of black. And there, whoops, what did I do wrong? All right, there we go, right? So this runs, even if you break things, this thing will show you an error. It will tell us where we have an error. It will tell us what line we have an error, right? We have an unterminated string on this line, right? Which is this thing. Actually, it is this that is the unterminated string, but we can fix that, and the whole thing just keeps running. So imagine that you're building an application where you have to log in, push a button to download something, and you want to make changes to this. So you start your application, you log in, you download things, you look at it and go, I don't want it to be like that. I want this thing to look like this instead. So you stop the application, change the code, run the application, log in, download, observe it, and go, maybe I can move it a cell or two left or right, okay? Hideously frustrating to have to do that. So with hot reloading, which you can turn off, you can just modify the program while it's running. As a matter of fact, this program up here is not an i3 status bar. This program up there is Anathema. So config, hack bar, templates, hack bar 2.0, bam, while it's running, okay? If I don't want to see the time anymore, why don't I just get rid of the time? No more time for you, all right? I always have time for you, see? All right. All this while it's running. Very convenient. Very nice to work with. So this is the C stack. It allows us to draw like layers, right? We draw things on top of other things, right? We can whack a border around this thing to make it feel even more like a creepy close button. Of course, if we don't want it there, an H stack and a spacer, and it's in the top right corner. It looks just like Windows. Okay, it doesn't look like Windows, but you know. So it is incredibly convenient to be able to do this while something is running. Okay, if we wanted to, we could go into this, modify our index, and say today showcasing Anathema. All right. Okay, there we go. So now no one have to ask what are we doing today, right? All this is, so what do we got? We got hot reloadable, we have stacking widgets, we have all these things that we can do. And so far, I'm doing this with templates only, right? There are more things we can do in templates. We actually have functions in templates. But before we get into that, let me show you what it would look like if we actually had some state, right? So let's define a global variable. It doesn't have to be global. We can make it a local variable to this, right? Called data. Using curly brackets is now implying that we are building a dictionary or a hash map or an object or a table, whatever you want, a map, okay? Whatever programming analogy works for you, right? If we had something called things and we did this, now we would be building a list, right? It's worth noting that the data types of Anathema are not homogeneous. Which means that you can put whatever you want in here, right? We can put true in there on 1.2, right? And if we wanted to see these values printed out, we can simply do so here. We can say for val in things and then change this text to val. And there we go. Right now, they're all just printed out next to each other. So it's a little bit hard to see what they actually say. Let's do that. Right. Since we're on the topic of a for loop, let's say that the foreground is black here. That might be easier to read, right? And bold. There we go. All right, so it's a little bit easier to read. In the interest of building things with for loops, we also have something called a loop index. So if I just write loop here, we're gonna get the loop index. Let's make this thing a little bit more visible, right? By wrapping it in brackets. So that's the first iteration, the second, the third iteration, the fourth iteration, the fifth iteration, right? As a matter of fact, let's get rid of all of this and let's just have our vertical stack instead where we show this, because this is painful to read otherwise, right? There we go, right? So here we can actually see them. It might make more sense to put the loop in there and do that. It might be a little bit more pleasant to read. Let's say that we had more values. Actually, no, this is fine, right? So what's the point of this loop thing, right? Well, let's say that we have backgrounds here, okay? We're gonna have a global value here now, global theme. And as part of this theme, we're going to have backgrounds, right? BGs. And we'll start with white and black. These will be our backgrounds. So what we can do here is we can say that the background is equal to theme.bgs. And then we can take the loop index here, modulo 2, because we have 2 of them, right? And then we can just say that the background, I'm going to run code I've never run before now. Background is BG. And now we get alternating colors. Again, if we wanted this to look a little bit better, an H stack here with a spacer might make it look a little bit more pleasant. But I have done something wrong. Oh yes, I put the background there like a pleb. There we go, right? It's a little bit grim with white and black, so let's go with gray and dark gray. I am using named colors here, but we don't have to do that. We can change this to 333 instead, right? You have a lot of options here, right? And you just access this thing with dot annotation like you would any object in almost any language, right? Had me fooled it was polybar? I wish. I built this thing in about half an hour. I got it running, and then I built all of this on stream in about 3 hours with network all this network monitor and everything is just templates in there, right? So we can just look at what we have in here, right? That's the CPU, which is this guy here, and we have the different levels here. I'm going to change that to local because oh, hang on, that I should probably rebuild that hack bar. Yeah, we're going to do this cargo add anathema. And then we're going to do a cargo build release for this thing. So we're going to rebuild this thing. I'm going to try not to break it while I'm running it now. There's a chance I'll do that. And then we're going to install this thing. We just wait 6 to 8 years for this to finish. Rust, am I right? Cargo install path here. So we're just installing hack bar as our local bar. The thing is, we don't even have to run this as a bar. I can just run hack bar in the terminal. I can run it in this terminal, right? Hack bar. There it is, right? You can see it up here. And we can modify this as we see fit. Again, if I go to templates, no, that's the bad thing to do. Index, bang, right? Then both of these will get the exclamation point, right? This thing is showing a different color because I don't know why it's showing a different color. Probably Tmux. So I don't know which color is the right one even. It doesn't matter. Point is, we can just modify both of these as they're running, and it's just a simple program, right? So yeah, I mean, if I want to show something else here, I want to throw an X in there. I don't know why I want an X in there, but you can do a lot of these things. We can change the different level colors and all that stuff, right? this was written before the variable declarations were a thing, or declarations were a thing. So I'm not going to swap to use declarations just yet, right? Okay. Why is that border not a square? Were you referring to the border in the... Sorry, I should do a better job reading chat before it becomes obsolete. Default padding. Terminal says array. Yes. So, okay, I can show you what actually happens with the border, right? So if we put a border here and inside I'm going to put text X, right? Let's just comment that out for a second. Right? So if I highlight a bit of text here, maybe you can see, maybe if I highlight the X, you can see that it's narrow and tall, right? So letters or cells in the terminal are not the same, right? The same width as height. If I wanted to draw this looking more square, I would have to do something like this, right? Which also means I could just put padding here with a left or one and a right or one, and get rid of these two, and it would have the same impact, right? This is why if I add a padding of 1, it's going to become even taller, right? Because the height is like twice the width. So the more we're padding this thing, the taller it's going to get compared to how wide it's going to be, right? But yes, that is probably what you guys were talking about. How you doing, Scott? How are you doing? What are you doing today? Yes. What are we doing today? What is homogeneous? Means that it is, yes. So homogeneous means that it is that everything is the same type. Heterogeneous, I guess, would be 2 or more different types. I don't know. This isn't Rust. Loops index, yes. So this loop variable is a magical variable that tracks where you are, the iteration counter of the loop, right? So if we add another value up here, whoops, we're going to get a 5th one, and another one, we're going to get a 6th one, and so on and so forth, right? Polyamorous. Is let global or local? Is it let global or local? You can use let. Let is an alias for local. So let and local result in the same thing, but local is the preferred one to use now. We didn't use to distinguish between global variables and local variables. Local variables are actually a new thing. To be able to achieve this in a previous iteration of Anathema, you'd have to use with BG as. You'd have to write it like this for it to do the same thing. But because variables are now scoped to the element, you can now omit that part and just declare or define a variable here, right? I keep using the word variable. That implies that you can change them, but you cannot. You can only declare and define. You cannot assign. Yes, this is also Anathema. So if I wanted to, I can go in here, open up the templates. Let's just go into the templates directly, right? And see what we have here. So we have index, message, pin, timer, and event. So if I open up the message, all this stuff represent a message. So if I wanted to, I could just change everyone's username to sausage. Bam, right? Now everyone is a sausage without a badge. So now we don't know who's who. Okay, very confusing, right? And again, all this while the application is running. I cannot stress how useful it is to be able to prototype and do this while an application is running, right? It is insanely easy, right? And this is template logic, right? We just say the people who wanted to have their badges showing, we did this. And then we created our own version of badges for that, right? I don't know if I have I'm not in there. So if I write test, I don't have my badge showing up. But if we put this true, now I have my badges showing up there. And this was like a name alias thing. So if I wanted Maniac to have an alias, Maniac, right? There you go. So we can alter reality. Okay. Maybe you don't want all the underscores, right? I don't know. Again, it's just template logic. Simple things are easy to do with the template. You can decide how you choose to represent something. Again, this is about the layout. The data comes from the components. So I haven't really talked about the components. I'm just showing you how we can deal with all the various permutations of data and all that, right? Yep, I can do that. And we'll give you a badger as well. There you go. Perfection, right? So yeah, so okay, let's go back to talking about this thing, right? A is missing. I don't know what you mean. All right, I'll stop now. That was Manic Mansion, wasn't it? Was it Maniac Mansion or Manic Mansion? I think it was Maniac Mansion, right? That's a game I haven't. It was Maniac Mansion, not Manic Mansion, right? What a game. But yeah, so that's how we can do layouts and do things on the fly, right? On the floor. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, let's say that we wanted to do a grid then, okay? We can say that we have rows that's going to contain a list of values, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can have cells that contains, what should we put inside the cells, right? A, B, and C, and D. Okay. So we could now get rid of this thing. We can have a V stack and say for row in rows, and then for cell in, well, H stack. And then for cell in cells, put text, put a border and then a cell. Okay. Idiot. Text cell. There we go, right? So now we've drawn a grid in there. Let's make this thing a little bit longer, right? If we do this, no. What was I want? What did I want to showcase with this? I didn't really have anything. That's all right, man. I'm happy to talk about it, right? Yes. Okay. So that's a good question. Let's say now we have to go into the running application and stop it, because now we're going to have to change the program to add components. In this case, we're just going to add a very simple template, and we're going to call this thing something, and it can go to something, ammo, right? We can have a hello that goes to hello ammo. Okay. Okay, let's cargo run this again and get on with our lives. So now in our index, we can use another template. Okay. We can put a hello in here instead, which doesn't do anything. So let's go to demo templates. Actually, why am I doing this in another terminal? Let's open up hello, say hello in there. And now we're going to get hello. So we can customize this thing as a separate template, right? We have a new component, although admittedly, this one is just a template, right? And this is a way to break things down. So if we wanted to, let's organize this application like a sane person would do, perhaps, right? Let's say that we have a row and a cell. There we go. And let's cargo run. We might as well do a release build while we're at it. Okay, so, oh yeah, there's no hello. So we're going to say for every row in rows, then we're going to have a row here instead, right? And now everything works. And then we're going to open our row and we're going to say for cell in attributes dot cells. And then here we're just going to put a cell. And then we're going to open up, the cell. That's supposed to be the row. And then here we're just going to say hello. Okay. So row is going to get that. Now we have to pass in cells here. That's going to be our row. So now we're passing in cells into the row. And now we should put an H stack around this. So that's going to be all the cells in that row. And the cell, what am I missing? One row. All right, so it's just one cell. Oh my goodness, I am so stupid. Okay, never mind that. I'm supposed to pass in cells in here. That makes more sense, sorry. Right, all right, so now we're just outputting hello here. We can wrap a border around this thing. But now we only have to deal with rows and cells. In this case, we're passing the cells in here. And we can now pass the cell into the cell, right? We can call this value. And then here we can access attributes value. And there's our ABCD again, right? As rows. We could do something like pass additional information to our row. We can pass in the row ID as row, maybe. So if we wanted to, we could put a text here with a row ID. And now we can see the row ID for every row. That's kind of gross and weird. So instead of using an H stack, we're going to use a row here. And all of a sudden, this data will align with this data. And yes, there is something called a cell that you could use instead here. So you can use cells and rows for this thing, right? Now, in this case, it doesn't make much sense to put a cell there. Whoops, that was a breaking error. Let's take this out so we can see what the error message is. Cell does not exist. Oh my god. So it's, of course, column. My goodness, I am a simpleton. There we go. Whoops, I forgot to clear the screen. There we go, right? So you can use rows and columns. Again, this is all documented in here, right? That calling a cell should not have broken there. Calling it a cell should have just given us a template error instead. So that, see, like that. So why is this breaking it? All right, I think we uncovered a bug here. And now if we call this thing cell. No, why aren't you breaking? All right, fine. I'll figure that one out later. Can you draw circles? You can draw circles as much as you can draw circles in the terminal, right? If you are interested in what you can draw, then you have terminal block characters. There are quite a lot of choices of box drawing, right, that you have when it comes to drawing. So technically you could use these rounded corners to draw a circle, right? You can customize your borders to have different corners if you want to. You can customize your borders quite a lot, right? Thank you, Freefall, right? So if we wanted to now, we can just draw circles. There you go. Now we have circles. Let's not have a border in there because that's stupid. And let's not print out that either because that's also stupid. Now it looks like a lot of infinities. So why don't we just add some space around these two? There we go, right? Thank you. There's quite a lot of characters you have to choose from with how you can draw things. You can draw pretty interesting progress bars using this. Yeah, there's a lot to choose from when it comes to terminal drawing characters, right? You can just play around with them until your heart's content, right? I don't know what this would look like. Oh, it's just one of these. Just gonna draw some shades. It's not 50 of them and they're not gray, so nobody cared. Yeah, you got a lot of options basically when it comes to drawing characters. You can do a lot with the Braille drawing stuff. If you look at Braille ASCII, you will find quite a lot of these things, which can be used for various loaders, and you can get pretty clever with this stuff to draw, right? It can look bad with some fonts, absolutely correct. But it does give you a lot to kind of draw with, and if you apply some logic, you can basically do like dots, dot printing, if you wish. But again, it's down to how the font renders it. Absolutely right. What else do we have that is worth talking about? Yeah, so this is the there you go. So what we can do, we can bring the border back in again, right? Let's just draw an X here. Let's put a border around this. Now we can choose the border style here to be thick or thin, which is the default one. Or alternatively, we can draw with we can draw the top left corner. I need to get that one, right? So we want that one. So now it's going to be the top. Now we want the top right corner. So we grab that. Now we want the right side, which is going to be the same. Now I want the bottom right, which is that. Now I want the bottom character, which is just that. And then we want the bottom left character, which is this. And finally, we want the left character, which is this. And that's it. We now have rounded corners on our something, right? There we go. Okay. Nice try, Juvis. Nice try. So yeah, you can alter how you draw your borders if you want to. Now we're doing it very basic by just adding plus signs there. Okay, so that is so that's what we have when it comes to drawing. I haven't talked about positions, right? Positioning is pretty useful. Again, we'll bring the set stack in here for this. So if you were building something like a game or whatever, where this is your playing field, and you want to, let's do this, right? Let's add some padding here, okay, to this thing. We're gonna say that left is 2, right is 2, top is 1, and bottom is 1. All right, so we make this a little bit bigger, and if this were to be our, I don't know what we do. You could probably do like an easy, like memory game here if you wanted to, right? Okay, we should add. We can certainly add rounded to it. That would be reasonably trivial. As a matter of fact, why don't we just add that now in this conversation, right? So thin, thick, rounded, and then we're gonna say default thick, edges, and then we do default rounded here, right? Okay. So that's going to be our top left. That's going to be our top. And our top right. And on our right. Oops. Come on. Okay, well, it's the same as that one, so fine. All right, I did it again. Oops, I did it again. And then our bottom right. Why are you incapable of moving the cursor properly? I do not know. And then our bottom left. And then our left. There we go. We could obviously be a bit clever, more clever how we deal with this stuff, right? Default rounded edges. And that's it. So we now have default rounded edges when it comes to this thing, right? Make 2048. I don't know if I can. I don't quite remember how the game even works, Caleb. So this is not in the release, obviously, because I just wrote this, but this will be in the next one. So when we go with border style, let's find the wording for this. So that's going to be rounded. So we can use border style rounded now. That should work. We can try this out in our demo by going into our TOML file and changing this to be a path. Projects, Rust, Anathema. And if I cargo run this now, and we change the border style to thick, rounded, there it is, right? Okay, so that will be in the next one, right? Mastermind, that's an old game. I remember that. My grandpa had a copy of that, and I could never understand it when I was a kid. Now I am more like grandpa, except he's dead, so I'm not entirely like him. Yeah, so now I have to go and make some changes here. So that's going to be in 0.2.9. Control T, new border style, rounded. This also means that I have to go to the guide, open up the border, find the thick, for rounded. That is not how you spell rounded. For rounded corners, use rounded as the border style. There we go. And then maybe we want to show this as well. I find it's like the best thing is to always like show as much as you can, because it helps with your like not expectations, but it kind of helps with getting to grips with things, right? So if you want to know what this thing looks like, we just take all this out and just paste this code here. Now we got that. We can just copy that and throw that in here, right? There we go. This should be on the dev branch, yes. Git commit -m added rounded border style docs. All right, so this one will go up next time, right? Wordle with colors. How's I haven't seen what's his face now in a while. Marek. I haven't seen him in a hot minute. Okay, but I want to go back to using the current released version when I showcase this, because that's the version that most people will probably use, right? If this looks weird, what we're actually seeing is the word rounded, okay? And what that means is that we're gonna, if we do this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can understand what this does, right? One, the first character is the top left corner. Then it's the top bar. Then it's the top right, bottom, bottom left, and left, right? That's how this works, right? Okay. Yes, so I was about to show you what you can do when you're building something like this. So let's say you build a game here and you have some kind of game over state, right? So you can say if game over, and in this case, we're going to say that game over is false. Yeah, I haven't finished writing anything here. Thank you, template language. So if it is game over, then we're going to put a position. Actually, we can put an alignment here. But I wanted to use position. So we use, actually, let's do this. Let's put a border here as well. And here we're going to have 2 widgets. We're going to have a C stack. Actually, we're going to have a C stack here. And then we're going to have a border. And we're going to have a text here saying game over. Okay. So if I now change this to true, we should see the game over screen there. Do you want rice now or do you want to wait? Making dinner now. I can have it later. Don't need to eat yet. All right. All right, Night. Have a good one, Maniac. I'll try to catch you if you're streaming. Okay, so we have this game over border over here, but because we have a C stack here, we can now put a position in here where we are going to put a text element here that looks like this. Game over. Game is now over, all right? So we get that. No, we can't do that. We have to say left 1. There we go. So we get this kind of text that we can position this thing relative to the C stack, which is relative to the board, or the board is relative to the C stack. And now if we wanted to, we could start aligning things, of course, right? We could change this to, probably best if we make this background red and hideous so it's easier to see. Text black. So we can actually, no, the text is not a thing, foreground. I forgot how this thing works, right? So we can have this pop up there. Of course, it would make more sense if we were to put this in the center of everything, right? But now it's in the center of the screen, which is not necessarily what we want. What could we do? We could position this thing relative to this. So we just add a... Do we need this C stack? No, we don't. We can make this thing into a position instead. And we say left is 10 maybe, and top is 5, right? So it's not like super good, is it? There we go, right? So by toggling this bit true or false, see what I did there, you can sort of enable these pop overs if you wanted to. Again, it makes sense to divide your template into smaller components because you're going to work with them, right? So far, I've been showing you the things with the language and the template language and how you can modify this thing, right? And if you think about it, oh yeah, where did the title go? No. We have to position this thing. This is now relative to that. Can we not put... well, we can put a C stack in here. So That's what we should do. We should put the C stack in the border. But that still doesn't show up. Why not? Why are we not seeing that? The border has one child. The C stack has many. I don't know why it's not showing up. Oh well. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's very useful, Maniac. Yeah, it took me a hot minute to like understand what you meant. I was like, T-Mux? I don't know. Anyway, let's hide this shameful thing and get rid of that. So right now, I kind of like showed you building all this stuff, right? But if we backtrack a little bit as to what we've been doing here, we've had the same application, and we've shown this application like some kind of awkward mail client. We have this perverted tic-tac-toe looking thing. Like all this while this thing is like running more or less, right? We can modify and do these things and change and test things and all that, right? So that's kind of one of the strong features of this. If we go in here and we're going to go one step further now, and we're going to start talking a little bit about components and when you actually want to have a little bit of logic applied to what it is that you're doing. So let's say for the sake of conversation, we're going to get rid of all of this stuff, right? Buy everything, templates buy. All right, we're going to have an index in there though, right? But let's add another component to this thing. So this is just going to be a template. We don't need that. And in here, we're going to have, let's say buttons. Okay, so let's make a component here called button. Now, we need to know maybe a couple of things. We need to know what the button should say. That can be sold in template. Some value. Really, the only thing we need to know is what the button should do when you press it, okay? And maybe it doesn't even need a state. Maybe it just signals something when you press the button, right? So let's just implement the component for the component trait for the bottom button, right? Like that. And let's have a mouse event here. For that to work, we have to enable mouse. So now we're going to have mouse support in our application, right? And we're going to make every button component react to the mouse press. And what should we do here? Well, you know what? We can have a button state, which is just a, it can be a Boolean value, right? That determines whether the button is down or not, okay? So to figure out whether the button is pressed or not, we'll say that we're going to have a position. It's going to be the mouse position. And then we will get the templates here. If the children.elements at position, this position, and we want to get the first one, right? And that's how we get hold of the element, right? Now, if the mouse button is down, I want to say left down. If the mouse button is pressed, not the same as is pressed and held down. So if you press and hold down the button, that's a different event. So you can actually see how these are just convenience functions. You have access to all of this information yourself. You can code up these events however you want based on the mouse events, right? So you don't have to use any of these functions, right? It's just they're just there for convenience sake, right? All this is exposed. So if LSB down, Wasn't it LSB down? No, left down. I don't know where that LSB thing came from. We can say is left down, then the state is true. Otherwise, the state, whoops, the state is false. So if you press the mouse button down, then we change the state, right? Actually, we should do this outside. So this is only applicable if we're pressing the mouse button down on here. If we let go of the mouse button, is left down. Do we have it left up? Yeah, we have a left up, then the state is false. But if the mouse is left up in here, then we have effectively pressed the button. Okay, so to reiterate this, because this probably looks a little bit confusing, we're going to get the position of the mouse cursor. Then we're going to find the children inside this element at the position of the mouse cursor, which most likely is the whatever label or whatever we have in there. We're going to get the first element in there. We don't really care what it is, but we could care if we wanted to. We can chain these, all right? We can say at position by tag border, right? So now we're going to select the border at this position, right? But we don't care about that. So if we are touching on the element, if the mouse button is down over that element, then we set the state to true. If the mouse button is up over that element, that means that we are releasing the mouse button, right? And when we just check the mouse button up here, we're just going to go, okay, is the mouse released? Then the state is false. Regardless of what the state is, we just say that it's false, right? I had a very busy day. I had to go and buy a bunch of stuff for the house. And I talked to... yeah, I've been doing another sponsored segment with the same people probably on Thursday. They have some new features, and I'm going to play with that on stream for a little bit, right? But anyway, so that's why we have two left mouse button up here, right? That's because if you press the left mouse button down, the state is true. But if you release the button outside of this thing, we have to set the state back to false regardless, right? New keyboard. No. Good grief, man. Still the same keyboard. Okay, so so this is us building the component. It looks like there's a lot going on here, but we really don't need all of this. And it probably looks busier than what it is, right? We're just getting the position, checking that we're pressing the mouse down on one of the elements, and then we're dealing with the mouse. We're going to come and deal with this later, right? So now let's actually build this as a component. So we're going to say builder. If you can write builder, that's I did, right? Now it's tempting to say component here, and it's going to be a button. And the template is going to be templates button.aml. And we'll unwrap this because, you know, why not? 2 arguments are missing. Okay, of course. So we have to have the actual button itself and the state. So we're just going to start off with false, right? New pants. Yes, I have new pants. It's strange of you to know this, but I have some beige linen pants, which are very comfortable. No more jeans for me. That's weird that you know that, Juvis. Anyway, so now we added our button. So do we have a button here? No, we don't. So let's make a new template button.aml file here. We're just going to say the button. Okay. Okay, so let's actually get this thing running now. Did I close that down? I did. Dempo. All right. Well, we don't actually do anything, right? So let's start with our index and say vstack text. Here is our button. And then we just add the button here. Okay, the button. It doesn't do anything. We click on it and nothing is happening. All right. So let's get this thing working, shall we? We've enabled the mouse, so we should have mouse support here, right? Let's change our template depending on the mouse state, right? So let's go into our button ammo and we say, we can do this, right? State. All right, so false, and then nothing's happening. It looks like the mouse thing is not working. Oh, there it is. Not sure why that wasn't working, but here's me pushing and releasing the mouse. So I can push it down here and release it here, and it will act, right? If I didn't do that, if we didn't have this left up here, but we only did that in here, then you're going to see how this thing is going to get super quirky, right? This works, pressing down, but releasing here, I now release the mouse button and it still says that it's pressed, right? Or in the case of buttons, it would be depressed. And for obvious reasons, okay? It's not depressed, right? Okay, so what can we actually do with all of this stuff, right? Well, there's a few things that we can do, right? We can certainly make the button submit the form, and we're going to get to that shortly. Let's add a border around this so it looks a little bit more buttony. And let's say that our foreground is based on our state, right? So can we say state? No, we can't. But we can do this. We can say local foreground is equal to, we'll have it as blue when it's up and red when it's down. So we can say foreground state here. Okay. So now we can see the button being pressed. Very easy. Very easily. We don't need this state thing there anymore, right? This is a lot easier to observe, right? What else are you going to use though, really? So, okay. But this button doesn't actually do anything other than change state. So it's not entirely useful. And there's another caveat here, right? What if we want to use multiple buttons? If we try to do this, it's going to complain that the button has already been used, okay? Because the button is registered as a component, then that means that it can only be one of them, right? What we have to say is that the button is actually a prototype, which means there can be more than one. This is not the Highlander, okay? So we're just going to pass in closures for these values instead. And unlike what they have done in the past, these things are created on the fly now. As we are grabbing a button here, we are instantiating a button into the tree. So now we have two individual buttons, right? We kind of already have a hover effect if we wanted to, right? And to the reason I want to say we have a hover effect is because we already have the mouse over making a change, right? It would be reasonably trivial, but we should keep our state slightly different in that case, right? Can the terminal track the mouse cursor? Why don't I show you something instead? Why don't we do this? Why don't we make a component for our index? And our index is going to have a mouse state. And we're going to say the state is for index is mouse. Now here we're going to grab the mouse event again, right? And all we're going to do here, we're going to disregard everything. We don't care about this. We do care about the state though, right? So we're going to say our state.x.set. All right. Okay, so we're setting the X and Y based on what the mouse is doing, right? And we're going to change this template to be a component again. But now we can use the default here, okay? As long as we give it a type, index. So we have seen component, template, and prototype, and now default. And default works as long as the state and the component derives default. Okay. Okay. Now, what we have here is the possibility to say that we have a Z stack. And then here we're going to have a position that is left of state.x and a top of state.y. And we're supposed to text x in a border. And that's it. All right. And now we have this thing following the mouse cursor, which is pretty cool. Can play with this for days. Look at it go. Let's offset this thing by 2 so it's a little bit easier to see it. All right. I'm using a Canon CV10E with a Sigma 18 to 35 mm lens. Do not buy these things for streaming. They are photography lenses and horribly expensive. In my book. That's what we're using though. Okay, so yeah, we have all these like mouse coordinates, whatever we want, right? At our disposal. And how cool is that? Right, but we don't care about that. So we're gonna, whoops, I'm gonna fix that. DJ of nothing. That's what we need. Right. But we don't really care about the mouse state here, right? So we're going to get rid of this for our index and stuff. But using this together with a canvas, you can make a very simple drawing program. I have done so many times, so we're not going to repeat that. All right. We go back to having a template here. Actually, no. Scratch that. We're going to ditch the mouse state, though. We're going to go back to having no state. And we don't care about the mouse event either. I'm going to show you something else, though, right? Let's say that a state is a string instead. That's better. Okay? Now, we got to do something when we push these buttons, because they don't actually do anything, right? We got 2 different buttons, so we can do 2 different things. Let's start by making the buttons a little bit less dumb, though, right? They just say the button. But why don't we introduce labels to the buttons, right? Okay, now we have 2 labels. So we can go into our button and instead say attributes.label. And there's our first and second button, right? However, we want these buttons to actually do something when we press them. So let's create some events for these buttons, okay? And what we're going to do now is called an associated event. So let's say that we have something called onClick. And onClick is going to lead to first and second, okay? So when the button reacts to an onClick event that we're going to produce, though, the first button is going to send first, the second button is going to send second, right? They both react to onClick events, they just have different destinations, okay? So let's go and look at what these destinations look like. So there's a function here on, not on message, on resize, on event, there we go, right? So we're going to get a user event here. And we can transmit various values here instead, but let's just make it simple. Let's match on the event.name. And we do nothing in the event of everything but the first one and the second one, right? Okay, so if we get a first one or a second one, we know here, right? So let's just change our state and say state is first pressed. Second pressed. Okay. So depending on what you do with these things, it's going to say either first or second pressed. So let's print out our state here, right? Which says nothing until we push them. Ah, we forgot to emit. I forgot to emit the event, okay? So let's go back to our main and let's emit the events from the button now. So here we can now publish an event if the left mouse button is up. So this is the button pressed, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to say to a context, which we need now. Publish. And what is it that we're publishing? Well, we're publishing on click, right? If I could just type, that would be great. Sure. So what we can publish with this thing is a value as well. We're going to get to that shortly. But now the button is pressed, we're publishing the on click. And here we're looking for the on clicks map, right? The on click for the first button maps to first and the second one maps to second, okay? So when the button emits on click, you get it. You understand this mapping now, right? First pressed, second pressed, right? So now we can actually do something useful with these things, all right? We can even take this one step further and say that they have some kind of value that they emit with it, right? 1 and not 1. Okay, let's use numerical values, shall we? No, we don't have to use numerical values. Not 1. Okay, so that should probably say value as well, right? Oh my god, my nose is itchy. Hello, Iset. How you doing? What is the use case for Anathema? Okay. I always struggle to try to sum this up so it doesn't become a long tirade of words. Building easily customizable terminal applications, right? So if I want to make a change to something, it is very, very easy, okay? We can take an example. We can take this program running here, right? If I wanted to make a change to this program, I can go and change how messages are dealt with, right? Let's say that I want to make, I want the messages to be italic instead, right? Now all the messages are italic, okay? I want to, what else could I do? Maybe I want to change the padding there, right? Just move the padding over. All this while it's running. What if I want to change my template here, right? For real, all right? And you can see that it's changing it while it's running. That is one of the use cases for it, right? You can very easily customize, modify applications without having to know Rust, right? You have to understand hexadecimal for the color values, right? You can barely see the color of these changing. But this is pretty intuitive as well, right? I'm making very like minute changes here, hardly visible, but yeah. Hiding the memory information, bringing it back, right? So that is one of the use cases. It's very easy to customize this, right? Very easy to customize. Can I make only your message bold? Yeah, of course, right? But I have to copy your name because it's long. Whoops. Did I just paste what a border in there? You know what we're going to do? I'm going to restart this and we're going to enable these. That didn't work, did it? No. I broke it. All right, let's just restart. It's an issue with this more than this. There we go. Hello, Enrico. But where was I? Right. Yes. So if we go to messages and we want to change your name, which I have to copy here because it's long and awkward. Hey, you picked it, right? Oh, Twitch. Let me just select some text. All right. So we can say that's the badge. If we say here, attributes dot message the username is equal to that, that should make your name, only your name, bold, right? Or italic, right? Your message. All right. Where is the message? Here we go, right? There you go. Now your message is bold. All right. And now it is not. No. Okay, so yeah, that is the use case for this. It's ridiculously simple to build things and use it, right? And because these templates, so what we're observing, if you're just joining us, right, what you're observing here is a program running in this buffer, in this panel in Tmux, and here's the template for the program. So we can modify this program as we see fit while the program is running, right? And that means that you can build a program and you can give someone this program along with the template so they can decide what the program should look like, right? So they're not subject to your design skills if they don't want to, right? It would be trivial, but it would involve more work than I'm willing to do. So, okay, so we're going to have a value here and we want to submit this value. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to get the value out of, let's just use the same type just so we can use type safety to get the value out for now. Let's go to here. So when we publish this thing, we're going to grab the attributes. The value we're going to send is going to be attributes.get as a U32 value. That's the name of the attribute. Yeah. And we'll unwrap this because we know it exists, right? So then we can send the value with this thing. And then I broke it. Let's close that one off and see. Oh yeah, we have mouse enabled. That's not going to work. Maybe that will work. Unwrap on a non-value. Didn't I give it an attribute? Called value. I do. Oh my god, it's the wrong attribute. All right, so context dot attributes. That was the attribute of the border, not the component. Whoopsie. All right, there we go. So we're sending this value back in here, right? So when we get the value, we just say second press, but we can also get the number here by saying event.data as IU32, I think we got, right? So these are the no unwrap. Oh, right, because we're assuming that we know the type, so we don't have to unwrap. Anyway, format, second passed, and then put the number in here. There we go, and that's going to be first press and the number. So now we're passing in the numerical value as well while we're doing this thing. So we can, and of course, we don't have to use the value that we use here as an attribute, right? We can use any value we want from within here. And in this case, we're just grabbing the value from here, but we could have had some additional state value or whatever that we use in there, right? Thank you for the follow. Yeah, thank you. Internet interface is nice. Not so trivial. Yeah, it's very, very trivial to do, right? It's just more time consuming than the first changes, right? Let's see. We would because we have to make the seconds available and translate them to a color, right? Okay, so one thing we haven't looked at are the data types that we pass into the template, right? I have to make the data available from Rust. As long as the data is available, I can use it in AML. AML doesn't have any data built into it. There's no data source. Everything is either encoded in the template or it comes from a state, right? So I would have to write that into the state to populate specifically the seconds and then translate those to a value. Which again would be trivial, but it would mean going in there, adding a state, like a seconds to color, maybe. And then seconds would be a value of color, right? Something like that, right? Yeah, so what we can do, I can show you what happens. Something that we can make available quite easily. Let's say that instead of having a state as a string, we're just going to have a usize here. And if we do that, then of course we can't change this to anything, right? Instead, we're gonna, when you press one of the buttons, what we're gonna do is we're gonna reset the state, right? So state is 0 or 1,000 for whatever reason, right? So now we can go from 0 to 1,000, right? But we can also affect the state through other means. So let's give it an on-tick event, right? We have quite a few events available. It's probably easier to see the events listed here. Under components, event handling, maybe. We have on mount and unmount when a component is added to the widget tree or removed from the widget tree. This is what happens when you restart your application or when you just reload your templates as a result of hot reloading. So by saving a template, you will cause an unmount followed by a mount when it comes back again. So if you are storing any state in your template, if you're modifying anything in your template based on an on-mount, you should probably negate that on unmount, right? So you don't keep accumulating values, right? On key, that would be on a key press. On mouse, we've observed that. We have on focus and on blur because we have tab indices. You can tab between different applications and give different components focus. On tick, and that's the one we're going to look at now. This is what happens every frame, right? So we're going to implement an on tick event here. And we're just going to take our state and add 1 to it. Okay. There we go. So now this thing is just going to keep incrementing for every tick. All right. And we can reset it with the first one, or we can bump it up to 1,000 or reset it to 1,000 with the second one, right? Function event AML identifier. Wait, I'm not sure I follow the conversation now. Function event AML identifier. What are we talking about? Yeah, so we would have to translate. We could translate this thing to a numerical value if we wanted to, right? We could probably make this go from black to white by just saying 255 here, okay? So this thing should now go up to 255 and then start again. No, it doesn't. Can we do that? I should probably change the tick event as well, right? Yeah, you can do functions. Okay, I'm gonna get to functions shortly. We certainly can do functions. Okay, so this one will just keep counting up. So what we could do here now is, let's say that this thing has a foreground of state. So it's just gonna cycle through these colors now. I think these would be the ANSI colors, but we're gonna make a function that will produce RGB values of these things, so they actually become grayscale, right? I think maybe this one can go further than 255 in that case. All right, so let's make a function. That should also be in here. Before we do that, I'm gonna go and grab a drink of water because I am very thirsty. Hang on. Okay. So what did I say? Well, yeah, functions, right? There's a few built-in functions, but we don't really care about them. We want to build our own function. So let's do that. We need a value kind to be available for us to be able to build a function. So we're going to grab that. I don't think that's available as part of the prelude. It is not in there. So we have to import that one. You're not likely going to build a bunch of functions, but you can if you want to. So let's make one here and let's call this thing toColor. And these are going to be our argument, and that has to be our output. So we want our arguments to be either 1 or this is just going to return null. So we're saying that there is one argument. We don't have to do much here. We're just going to get this thing as an integer. And that's going to be our arg. And that will be our number. And we're going to change this now to a hex value. And we say hex from num, num, and num. Num, 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 and num. Right. All right. And then this is going to be, we have to cast a number here, right? We know it's a U8. So this is not an issue. Like that. Okay, so now we made our own function. How you doing, Enrico pal? Wait, why are you Enrico pal? There you go. Don't call me buddy, friend. Okay, so we just made our own one. I'm not your friend, guy. Sorry, I don't remember the order. All right, so now we made our own function called toColor. So we can register this function with our builder here. So builder.register function, maybe. It's on the documentation. Register function, the name of the function and the pointer to the function itself, right? So this one's going to be toColor. And it's going to be our toColor function, right? But there isn't one in the builder. Is there no register function? Okay. I seem to have wow, there is a register function. Did I typo this? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Okay. So now we have a function in here. So we're going to say that our foreground is toColor state. And there we go. Now it's going to cycle through basically go from black to white. With our new fancy toColor function. We can also call the function like this. That also works. If we want to see what this thing is outputting, we can do toColor here. Actually, that's just gonna, yeah, it's gonna output the hex value. So you can see the hex value here. Well, you can when the color isn't on naked. Well, we have to start coming up with a day for it. I haven't said anything. The only thing I said was going to be after the holiday, which is now. So let's get people involved, Enrico. Should we try in 2 weeks from now? I'll poke people on Discord. Let me make sure that I am gonna be here the 22nd. I should be here. Yeah, let's say 22nd. Is the 22nd of July good for everyone for the next relay? Question mark. And then we do a thumbs up and we do a thumbs down so we can get an ID. Where's the thumbs down when you need it? There we go. The 2-day one? Yeah. All I know is that I'm not going first. Okay, so that was looking at functions. What else is there to mention here? I don't think there's much to say about this. But here's the thing. I think that we are kind of done now with if the date works for you guys, go and give it a thumbs up on the Discord channel so we can get an idea for people who are interested, right? So yeah, I don't really have anything to add to this now. This has not been an entirely too exciting stream, so I think maybe we'll just cap it here. I think we're gonna start something else now on stream. We're gonna start building something else. Maybe we go back to the game engine after this. It has been a long time and I don't remember much of it. And I think we've kind of exhausted what we can do with Anathema on stream as well. I don't think there's that much more to add, right? I have heard of JJ. So I think maybe we'll start something new after today. We'll do a sponsor segment on Thursday probably, and we might start the what state is game engine in right now. It probably isn't. We'll see what it is. It's a little bit of an unbearable project because everyone's being so everyone's trying to pile in at the back of the car when we do these things. So we'll see what it turns out to be. But we might start it from scratch as well. We'll see. I did try to get a lot of things working for it, and I think maybe we just shrink the scope even more. So we might completely just start from scratch with game engine. Well, I say start from scratch, but we have the graphics thing. I don't know what we would do for that. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, this has been a moderately boring and uninteresting stream, I have to say. I mean, I'm not fishing for compliments. I have been bored doing this, and you have been bored watching this. Just a fact, right? So we should probably park the Anathema stuff for now and come up with something else to do. I will, of course, keep working on Anathema. I just don't think it's good streaming content. You the only one. And I had a little bit of fun as well, though. Szechuan pepper. Fuck. I shouldn't have taken me that long to realize that's what you know. I thought it was some kind of German thing. Zero Ziva time? No, I don't think we're going to do gaming, but I am going to go and play Balatro now. So on that note, what's the best way to start learning? It's to ask questions on Discord, to read the guide. This is the best way to start. All right. Yeah, that's good stuff, Enrico. It's good peppers. I did have some jalapeno cream in Gothenburg, and it was really good. Ask Skylar. Skylar knows. Yeah, Skylar has a good idea on this thing, right? So maybe we do a game engine. Maybe we don't do a game engine. Maybe we do something completely different. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I think I think Terminal is a little bit dead by now. So we can probably move on from there. Yeah. I guess that's all I have for now. I'm gonna go outside now. You can't stop me. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I might stream later, but I might do something like play Balatro on